Good morning and welcome to day 3 of the National Conference on Ending Homelessness. Our program will be getting started shortly. There is a lot of space up front, so please take your seats.
This work is hard, really hard.
It can burn.
May be surprised to find something weird. Really, really weird.
Poop anywhere but the toilet. Nudity nobody needed to see.
Don't give up, you wonderful helper, you don't give up.
Rent will not always be paid on time and in full. Case management goals will not always be met.
Some days will be spent jumping from crisis to crisis rather than doing proactive work.
Every now and then,
Donations will happen at the least best possible moment.
Don't give up, you wonderful helper, you don't give up.
You have told yourself to practice good self-care. You still have days, well, you don't.
An extra glass of wine here, a little intrusive imagery while trying to sleep there.
Program participants will complain. Community partners will complain. The general public will complain.
Most days you will never serve enough people adequately in a way that keeps others happy.
Or, for every happy person, there are several others who are not.
Don't give up, you wonderful helper, you. Don't give up.
You went into this work for a reason. Maybe you forgot why.
Maybe the reason has changed.
Find that reason, hold that space.
Breathe in, breathe out.
you didn't go into this because it was easy.
Maybe you didn't go into it because it was this hard, but you always knew this wouldn't be easy.
Our success will not be measured by how easy we made the work. It will be measured by what we achieved in difficulty.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up, you wonderful helper, you don't give up. You have epic things to do.
Good morning and welcome to Day 3 of the National Conference on Ending Homelessness. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the Alliance's Vice President of Programs and Policy, Mr. Steve Berg.
Give me a second. I got to look at this. So we all have activities where we're always busy. It's not like this was easy work before coronavirus started, right? Always hard, but in the last few years, it's been particularly hard. We've had to deal with danger to ourselves and to the people we work with. We've had huge opportunities, but questioned whether we had the alliances we needed to take advantage of those opportunities. Ends up just a constant state of anxiety. But when I'm coming here and seeing, well, and then the other thing we've had is we've had people trying to take political advantage by vilifying what we're doing, vilifying the people we're working with and working on behalf of. So to come here and have this reminder, just this graphic visual reminder looking out on this crowd, that it's possible to make progress. That we have people making progress all over the country, despite the bad news, despite the fear, despite the anxiety. People are making progress all over the country, and we've been hearing about it for 3 days, and it's really wonderful. And we've been together so that we can have that experience. Feel it, that it's not just us. It's not each one of us trying to get things done by ourselves alone. We're part of a whole community that's working to end homelessness, and to come here and see this reminder of it, and to feel this reminder of it is an excellent thing. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work you're doing, and we're going to keep doing it. One of the things we need help with is with the U.S. Congress, the federal government. Most of us are, well, most of you, most people working on homeless services, most of the solutions that we really talk about include substantially more funding from the federal government, funding dedicated to good policies that really work for people and recognize people's humanity. One of the things we're doing, we usually, as people come to these conferences before know, we usually have a Hill Day on the afternoon of the last day of the conference. Can't really do that this year. Congress is not really open to having big groups in most places. So we're doing another virtual Hill Day on September 14th. We need people to sign up for that. Everyone who came to the conference got an email, maybe a couple emails, reminding you that this Capitol Hill Day is taking place and that we need your help. Please, please, please register for that. Get involved in activities to have meetings, have virtual meetings if that's what's necessary. Have meetings in your home states with your members of Congress, talking about the need for funding, talking about the need for good policies. We have a lot of work to, one of the places we have a lot of work to do is in the policy area, both nationally and in states around the country. We need to increase our level of organization about doing that, and the Capitol Hill Day on September 14th is a good place to start. So this session, this is the last session of the conference. It's an important session. There's excellent things to learn here, and so we're happy. I'm glad to see the room is still full. People didn't leave early. That's great. So looking forward to this session, and we're going to start with Anthony Love, who I am happy to introduce right now. Anthony is someone I've known for a long time. He's been working in the field of homeless services for a long time, and then went to work for the federal government, working for the Department of Veterans Affairs, working for the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, and is now back with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And really one of the key people sort of working a lot of times behind the scenes to make veterans homelessness one of the real public policy success stories of the last 20 years. And they're not done yet. The VA has big things that they're moving forward on homelessness. And let me bring up Anthony Love to describe that.
How y'all doing? Okay, some of y'all are still on mute. How y'all doing? All right. Very good, very good. Thank you so much, Steve, for that introduction. Here we go. I definitely appreciate being here. I'm here today to talk briefly about the work that VA is doing, and definitely and how you can help us accomplish the goals that we've set. Before I get started, let me ask a question. By show of hands, who have heard about or know about VA's goal to house 38,000 veterans by the end of the year? Okay. Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. I want to see something. If you are a VA employee or a VA grantee, put your hands down. Yeah, this speech ain't long enough, but okay. So pay attention to the people who put their hands down, because I'll tell you later why, but these are the folks that I'm gonna need you to engage with later on. In the next few minutes, what I wanna do is to provide you with what we're doing and invite you to join us to not only accomplish this goal, but to exceed this goal. So we at the VA remain strongly and fiercely committed to ending veteran homelessness. And we realize and we know, as most of you know, a critical component of ending veteran homelessness is increasing housing placement. Many of you have made major contributions to the work that we've done. You've heard the statistic over and over again. Over the last 10 years, we've seen veteran homelessness decrease by almost half. And many of you made major contributions to this decrease. But despite this progress, what the data is telling us is that since 2016, progress towards this goal has stagnated. In fact, just to be clear and to paint kind of a picture, homelessness among veterans decreased roughly by 47% between 2010 and 2016. But between 2016 and 2020, it only declined by 6%. And in 2020, there was a slight uptick. So the number of veterans experiencing homelessness has kind of stalled. And so in order to accelerate getting back to where we need to be, we have to have the housing placements among veterans. We need to accelerate that progress. We need to move quickly on it. So we set a goal to house at least 38,000 veterans by the end of this calendar year. So it is July 27th, right? August is next week. So 38,000 by the end of the year. So it is a stretch goal, and it is a goal that someone says that if a goal doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. I'm slightly terrified, but we're going to get there. So each of the VA medical centers they've been provided with individual targets to collectively achieve this national goal. And before I go any further, I want you to know that in an effort to ensure that we don't exacerbate disparities, because there are oftentimes unintended consequences when you accelerate that way, we've created a dashboard to monitor outcomes and not just monitor outcomes, but have outcomes disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and gender, and so that they can inform, thank you, so that they can not only inform planning, but they can also inform any type of course corrections that we need to make. And so to give you a sense of where things currently stand, like I said, we're at the halfway point, right? I got some good news for you though. Our housing placement rates are currently on track to actually meet the goal. As of June, we've housed over 19,000 veterans. So we're halfway there. So we do a little happy dance and, and then get back to work. So we want to just also applaud all the hard work that our local VAs, along with their local stakeholders, have done at least to get us to this point. And we know that you're doing a lot to serve those who have served us, those men and women in uniform. So we want to invite you to join us in these efforts because the work is not done yet. And in your community, we want you to partner with your local VA medical centers and your VA grantees, those folks who are asked to put their hands down, holler at them, before they leave. And we want you to take into account or to consider the following actions. I'm going to list out a couple of actions that we want you to just kind of consider to help the veterans who are homeless in your community to get housed rapidly. So in your community, you've had probably some veteran leadership groups who probably have been less active during COVID. Take this opportunity to revive those groups, to bring them to the table, including, but especially, veterans with lived experience. And not only just bring them to the table, but bring them to the table for information sharing and planning and collectively tracking local progress. We want you, we implore you, we invite you to formally adopt and commit to achieve the housing goals set by your local VA medical center and make it a part of your community's total housing goal. We want you to partner not only with them to do that part, but we want you to partner with your local medical center and other VA homeless programs to identify literally homeless veterans through your community's coordinated entry process, using your local by name list, and teaming up to conduct multidisciplinary outreach services in your community. So the point of it is that we're not just housing homeless veterans, or how we may define homeless, but we want to house those veterans who are literally homeless. And we want to house these 38,000 veterans unduplicated. So there's not some trickery, but these are literally 38,000 veterans. We also ask that you use equity tools, reports and dashboards in addition to your local HMIS data to identify disparities that need to be and should be addressed. And we want you to also proactively outreach and engage veterans with higher vulnerabilities, including those with past histories in institutional care or criminal justice involvement, those who are unsheltered, and or those with the longest histories of homelessness. And lastly, I want to include the local VA medical, we ask you that you include the local VA medical center and key partners in your landlord private housing engagement strategy to support veteran housing placement. We understand that this commitment will require additional time and energy. And I just want to say that we definitely appreciate your partnership and your commitment to ensuring that all veterans have a safe and stable place to call home. So with all of that being said, I'll stop there. And I want to introduce our next speaker, who you should know. And if you don't know, you will know. Our next speaker is Amanda Andiri, who is the CEO of Funders Together. But more than that, Amanda is a fierce and tireless advocate, leader, and what I would call a warrior for racial and housing justice. I'll put it like this. She says what she means, and she means what she says. And I would say that if I said what I said had a name, it would be Amanda Andere. Amanda.
Good afternoon. Oh, come on, you have to do better than that. Good afternoon. I want to acknowledge first that we are on stolen ancestral land of the Anacostans, and we thank the original caretakers. May we honor the indigenous people by returning to them what is theirs and what was taken from them. We acknowledge the legacy of slavery in our country and the enslaved African people whose labor was exploited for generations to help establish the economy of the United States that we all enjoy. May we honor them by challenging our ideas of racialized capitalism and returning what was taken from them. In that spirit, Funders Together to End Homelessness, we want to go beyond recognizing, and so our action this week is that we will be donating a portion of what we spent to hold our Funders Institute to a local Indigenous organization. And I encourage all of you to think about how you can go beyond a land recognition at your own convenings. Like all of us, I want to thank Nan for her leadership and friendship, especially for seeing the work of racial equity as critical to ending homelessness and engaging in principled struggle over many dinners, a couple glasses of wine, about how we get the path to be more equitable and just in our systems. Nan, you have always been so welcoming and kind to me. You have seen me as my authentic self. You have called me when I needed a friend and I felt like I was in crisis. And you have a wicked sense of humor that brings some joy to this tough work. Thank you for being you, and thank you for your leadership. I know many of us can say so much about Anne professionally, but I just want to share that Anne is, of course, a partner, an ally, a co-conspirator for justice, but she is also a friend. She is such a giving soul who has shown me light when I was in some pretty dark places the last couple of years. And it is her love for people, her desire to be constantly transformed, that makes her the exact right leader to get us to the promised land of housing justice. Congrats again, Anne. During the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, overdue awakening to structural racism and rightful continued uprising in our country, I think we have all wrestled with the tension between wanting the world to go back to normal and knowing we can't. I often think about this quote from Renee Taylor, an author and visionary who has shared her own lived experience with homelessness. We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, and lack. We should long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunities to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature. I've especially thought about the idea of stitching a new garment or planting new seeds and toiling new soil, as Aisha Alexander from the Giving Gap reminds us that the tree of racism is over 400 years old. The roots are deep and the fruit they bear is rotten. So we must uproot the whole thing and start anew. And if I could ask for my slides to be put up, that would be great. Thank you. As we embarked on a new strategic framework for Funders Together over the last few years, we pushed ourselves to ask tough questions about what we believe and how those beliefs are reflected in our values and actions. Our learning and unlearning and commitment to liberation led us to affirm while racial equity is an important step in addressing disparities, we will not transform, upend, or rebuild without leading with racial and housing justice at our core, and knowing the difference between equity and justice is essential as we stitch a new garment rooted in liberation. As our partners at the Philanthropic Institute for Racial Equity remind us, a racial equity lens separates symptoms from causes, but a racial justice lens brings into view the confrontation of power, the redistribution of resources, and the systemic transformation necessary for real change. Justice requires urgent fundamental changes that reposition communities of color in relation to power and resources, which includes being able to challenge and shape the many institutions that determine a community's condition. Our new strategic framework codifies the ways in which we have been acting and truth-telling for the last couple of years. It's a roadmap for how we want our collective work to be different so we can move beyond systems change and equity and be led by people with lived expertise towards transformation, justice, and liberation. We are excited to put forth our vision for how philanthropy and the movement to end homelessness can advance housing justice grounded in racial justice, and how our organization's North Star is rooted in radical love, disruption, and collective care, where people can show up as their true, authentic selves in radical opposition to the dominant culture. We want to be bold. We want to model and incubate all the way we tell funders how to act more justly in community. We want to use joy as the resistance to the oppression we face. We will still be a place where all are welcome on their learning journey towards equity and justice. Our goal is always to meet folks where they are, but not leave them there. We know housing justice is racial justice. And so we have co-created our vision for housing justice and hope to be stretched further in our thinking in partnership with community and all of you and the network of funders we seek to mobilize towards more just action. So here is what we believe. Housing is a fundamental human right. Housing justice is the building block for racial justice and liberation. A just housing society offers the assurance of safe, secure, affordable, and dignified living conditions where people have power and agency over where and how they live. Let me say that again. People have power and agency over where and how they live. It is not enough to just move them to the next affordable place. They need to create the community that they want to see. Housing justice recognizes that for generations, equitable access to housing has been denied to Black and Indigenous people and other communities of color, which has fueled the disproportionate numbers of Black and other people of color experiencing homelessness. By pursuing housing justice, Funders Together is unapologetically stating that homelessness is a racialized experience created and exacerbated by the forces of structural racism. Funders Together will advocate with all of you for corrective action, such as reparations, to address the cumulative disparities and transform systems of accountability to ensure housing for all. True justice and liberation cannot be achieved until we confront and hold accountable the reality that the way we operate, philanthropy, and all of us as gatekeepers to power and resources, all of us are gatekeepers to power and resources, and we need to be dismantled, then reoriented, and reimagined towards a more liberated way of resourcing communities. We want to imagine with you a world beyond incremental change in housing policy and resources and begin to uproot the commodification of housing. We will get there together. We will wrestle with hard truths. We will not always agree on the path, but hopefully when we get to the place of a more liberated community where housing for all is a reality, we will look back and thank ourselves for not sitting in the comfort of small change, but rejoice with joy in the ability to reimagine community rooted in housing and racial justice. Transformation is not just a transformed or different outcome. It means transforming the process in the way we make decisions and prioritize resources. It's the literal transformation of power. It forces you to ask, how are you giving up power to Black and brown folks, especially people with lived expertise? One of the ways I've seen us transform as a sector, as an industry, to be more of a movement is the formation of the National Coalition for Housing Justice, the brainchild of Ann Oliva when she was trying to find a new home to do policy work differently. As homelessness was under attack by a previous administration that we will not mention, Ann brought us all together at the end of 2019. And she did not know that we would be facing a global pandemic that exacerbated the already devastating housing crisis. And almost 3 years later, we have formed a coalition that meets every Friday morning to strategize and realize a more just way of doing housing advocacy, because we have more power and impact when we work together, rooted in housing and racial justice. I know it is hard to find hope as the world seems to be crumbling around us. I wake up every day knowing that joy, pain, and hope can live in the same place. The boldness and conviction from the housing justice movement to not tinker around the edges or accept incremental change, but fundamentally uproot the oppression in our system gives me hope. I have hope, my friends, because we finally moved from talking about racial equity to pushing for racial and housing justice and knowing the difference. I have hope because the energy in the streets is finally speaking louder than the people who are gatekeepers to resources and power. I have hope because we are finally listening to what communities are saying will make them feel safe and know we can't end housing insecurity and homelessness until we defund and dismantle the systems designed for our oppression. I have hope because the power of our work is finally shifting to where it rightfully belongs, to people closest to the problem, to people with lived experience and lived expertise. And so I'm asking you today, will you join us on this journey of hope? Will you shift from learning about racial equity to action that leads to justice? Are you ready to decolonize our systems of oppression and gatekeeping? Will you give up power to Black, Indigenous people, and people of color? Are you ready for a radical reimagining of our community that will push us towards racial and housing justice? Will you not sit on the sidelines as an ally, but be a co-conspirator, a comrade in our shared liberation? I have hope because I know the answer is yes. We might disagree on how we get there, but we will get to the promised land together, and we are reminded by Assata Shakur. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Amanda. That was like, I have like goosebumps and all of the things. Thank you so much. I need a second. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ambassador Susan Rice. I'm about to tell you a lot about Ambassador Rice, but if there is one who gets things done. She worked for President Clinton on the National Security Council and became the Assistant Secretary of African Affairs at the State Department until 2001. She was the youngest person serving at that time. Right? Ambassador Rice became the ambassador to the UN in 2009, where she was a champion for human rights and anti-poverty. While at the UN, she elevated climate change, LGBTQ and women's rights as global issues, committed the U.S. to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the UN Millennium Development Goals. In 2021, President Biden appointed her to the Domestic Policy Council. As the domestic policy advisor for President Biden, Ambassador Rice drives the formulation and implementation of the president's policy agenda, from economic mobility and racial equity to healthcare and, of course, housing. From this vantage point, she has a unique lens and perspective on the intersections that these policy drivers have on homelessness and vice versa. Under Ambassador Rice's leadership, the Domestic Policy Council works closely with the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness and its member agencies to bring the influence, resources, and expertise needed to support the government's work to end homelessness. It is now my distinct pleasure to bring to the stage Ambassador Susan Rice.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Anne, for that very generous introduction and for stepping up to lead this organization. I also want to thank Nan Roman for her years of service, not only as the head of the National Alliance, but as a valued partner of the Biden-Harris administration and many others. Thank you, Nan. Let me also recognize one of your co-founders and past chairs, Susan Baker, whose tremendous work helped make this group the force it is today. It's good to be with you. You are some of the nation's most thoughtful and passionate advocates working to end homelessness, and I'm honored to be here on behalf of a champion for making housing available to all. President Joe Biden. President Biden believes deeply that every American deserves a roof over their head, not only as a matter of security, stability, and well-being, but as a matter of dignity. Guided by that conviction, I'm looking forward to sharing a bit today about how far we've come, the work we have ahead, and the holistic approach we need to realize the goal of a nation without homelessness. During his 2020 presidential campaign, President Biden pledged to pursue a comprehensive approach to ending homelessness. He committed to undoing counterproductive and often harmful policies of the past, and to taking a housing-first approach to our homelessness crisis. He promised to partner with mayors and local officials on the front lines of this fight. He committed to protecting Americans who too often find themselves living on the edge, from veterans to LGBTQI+ individuals to people who were formerly incarcerated. It happened that President Biden unveiled that campaign commitment on February 24th, 2020. The very next day, the CDC warned Americans to brace for a deadly new coronavirus. Within weeks, the pandemic surged across the country, falling especially hard on the most economically vulnerable Americans and on those already experiencing homelessness. Millions of Americans found themselves unemployed and in many cases now on the streets. To comply with social distancing, Shelters were forced to turn people away, and many of you saw this up front, close hand, personally. Faced with a once-in-a-century pandemic, President Biden didn't retreat from his commitment to tackle the homelessness crisis. He wasn't deterred. Instead, he doubled down. The president's landmark American Rescue Plan invested historic resources to combat homelessness. We distributed 70,000 emergency housing vouchers. We devoted $5 billion for the Home Investment Partnerships Program to create permanent, safe, supportive housing. We put another $800 million towards homelessness support for families. Many of you have utilized the billions of dollars in state and local recovery funds to keep people off the streets and create permanent housing. Confronting the prospect of a flood of evictions, the Biden-Harris administration has distributed over $30 billion in emergency rental assistance to cover rent and utilities, helping over 6 million households. HUD implemented new rules requiring landlords to provide more notice before evictions and more information about available assistance. We offered unprecedented flexibility in the use of federal funds so that the most vulnerable households could access this assistance. When the courts threatened CDC's eviction moratorium, we fought to keep the moratorium in place and to keep Americans in their homes for as long as possible. As we've reached a point in the pandemic where COVID-19 is no longer the same disruptive force that it once was, our administration has nonetheless kept its foot on the gas. Last September, the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness launched our House America plan. It's an all-hands-on-deck effort to rehouse at least 100,000 people experiencing homelessness and expand the supply of safe and affordable housing by at least 20,000 units by the end of this year. We followed that up with a housing supply action plan, including reforms to ensure that we're using federal land and buildings to create more housing for people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. At the VA and HUD, my colleagues Secretary Fudge and Secretary McDonough are busy implementing a bold plan to eliminate veterans' homelessness. These policies and this record infusion of resources are delivering real results. According to a HUD analysis, the American Rescue Plan and earlier rounds of relief will lift up to 211,000 households from homelessness and bring them into safe and stable housing over the course of the next several years. Here, in my hometown of Washington, D.C., homelessness has reportedly been cut by 13% in the past year alone. This is significant, hard-won progress, but we all know that homelessness in America is still on the rise, and more than 500,000 people on any given night are sleeping in shelters or cars or encampments, including just blocks from the White House. Relative to their percentage of the overall population, there are 3 times as many Black Americans and 5 times as many Native Americans experiencing homelessness. Tens of thousands of people die every year for lack of stable housing, with a life expectancy among people experiencing homelessness nearly 30 years less than the average American. We can and we must do better. That means addressing homelessness wisely and comprehensively, based on what research tells us. Instead of withholding housing and food until someone overcomes obstacles such as addiction or mental illness, as you know, we need to recognize that a home is the foundation on which to rebuild a life, which means focusing on housing first. Instead of only trying to get people off the streets, we need to focus relentlessly on preventing people from experiencing homelessness in the first place. Instead of criminalizing homelessness, we need to address the underlying causes and provide the support and services that people need. Not having a home is a tragedy. It should not be a felony. Ending homelessness requires a whole-of-government response that breaks down barriers and bureaucratic silos. The Domestic Policy Council, which I'm proud to lead, coordinates our homelessness response alongside leaders like Secretary Fudge, Secretary McDonough, and Jeff Olivet, who heads the Interagency Council on Homelessness. That coordination ensures we're addressing homelessness in the context of our administration's work on a wide range of issues, from criminal justice reform to mental health. You'll see that reflected in our federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness, which will address in particular unsheltered homelessness. We'll have more to share on that in the coming months, but I'm excited to say that our plan is ambitious and it embodies this interdisciplinary approach. This morning, let me elaborate on just 3 cross-cutting imperatives: advancing equity, addressing mental health, and decriminalizing homelessness. First, since homelessness disproportionately impacts certain communities, as we all know, we must continue to advance equity in all that we do. On President Biden's very first day in office, he signed a historic executive order making equity and racial justice the business of the entire federal government. That had never been done before, and it's been a game changer when it comes to addressing homelessness. For example, we helped get emergency rental assistance to those who need it most by taking steps like reducing burdensome documentation requirements and expanding outreach, including multilingual outreach through unions and faith organizations. As a result, over 80% of that assistance went to our lowest income families. 60% went to Black or Hispanic renters. 2/3 went to female-headed households. Low-income and majority Black neighborhoods experienced the greatest reductions in evictions. Then consider the steps we've taken to protect LGBTQI+ people from discrimination in housing. Within weeks of taking office, in this administration, HUD announced that it would enforce the Fair Housing Act to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and sexual identity. HUD restored protections so that transgender Americans experiencing homelessness can access shelters consistent with their gender identity. This past June, during Pride Month, President Biden directed his administration to further address LGBTQI+ homelessness and housing instability. His order charged federal agencies with strengthening services supporting LGBTQI plus individuals and expanded voluntary family counseling programs so that fewer LGBTQI plus youth are rejected by their families and more can stay in a loving household. Secondly, to help end homelessness, we must ensure access to mental health, trauma, and substance use services for all Americans. Our nation's mental health crisis impacts Americans of all backgrounds, as we all know well. Yet, with severe mental illness issues afflicting more than 1 in 5 people experiencing homelessness, mental health is deeply intertwined with and exacerbated by homelessness. As part of his unity agenda that the President announced in his State of the Union address, President Biden laid out a comprehensive strategy to transform how we understand and treat mental health conditions. That means building a system with enough capacity to treat everyone. It means connecting people to the services they need by tackling high costs and other barriers. And it means supporting all Americans by creating environments that support mental health and well-being, whether in our schools or online. At the same time, we're implementing a national drug control strategy focused on expanding access to treatment and ensuring that resources are deployed alongside housing support so that people leaving treatment don't end up back on the streets. And third, we must continue working to halt the criminalization of homelessness and safely reduce unnecessary interactions with the criminal justice system. Over the past decade and a half, we've seen a 50% increase in laws making it illegal to sit or sleep in public outdoor spaces. Nearly every state has a law on the books criminalizing homelessness. It's time we acknowledge that we cannot arrest or incarcerate our way out of this problem. The executive order President Biden signed in May to advance effective, accountable policing made this point explicitly. It calls for supporting alternative responses to arrest and incarceration, including for people experiencing homelessness. Many of you have likely seen these alternative models at work, or you are working them yourselves. In Denver, for example, participants in a program that provides both affordable housing and support services experienced 8 fewer police contacts and 4 fewer arrests than those who received no housing support. On average, they spent 38 days less in jail. That's better for individuals. It's better for police who can focus on real crime. It's better for communities. So let's create more of these evidence-based alternatives. To further advance our holistic approach to homelessness, President Biden's fiscal 23 budget seeks significant increases in funding for homeless assistance programs. Nearly $3.6 billion for homeless assistance grants, with support for shelter, outreach, rapid rehousing, and homelessness prevention. Over $4.2 billion to support veterans experiencing homelessness. The President also requested a $4.7 billion increase to the Housing Choice Vouchers, which would fund as many as 200,000 additional vouchers. along with a $450 million increase to the Home Investment Program. Taken together, these investments constitute a major push by the federal government to end homelessness. But tackling this challenge with all of its facets will take each of us in this room and well beyond. State and local officials, continuum of care providers, academics, advocates, remarkable individuals who have experienced homelessness themselves and are now helping others get back on their feet. You are healers and heroes. I know the pandemic has exhausted providers and budgets alike. I also know what can be accomplished by all of us working in concert, getting creative, and bringing everyone to the table. And there is no time to waste. We all feel the urgency of meeting this moment just walking down the street, reading the desperation in our fellow Americans' eyes, and on hand-lettered cardboard signs. Recently, an artist collected a number of those signs for an exhibit at the DC Public Library. Some of you may be familiar with that exhibit. There are messages reading, and I quote, "Vet, no job. I don't like this. I just need a little help. God bless." Another, "This is awkward for me too." Another, "Need a miracle." Finally, another saying, "If home is where the heart is, where does the heart go when there's no home?" These are words of loss and longing, and one day, I hope, the rare place we'll be able to see them is in an exhibit at a museum. Together, let's marshal all of our empathy, all of our smarts, and all of our resources. Let's break down the old barriers and build new models of support. Let's move our nation closer to a future where no one experiences the tragedy and the hardship of homelessness, and everyone has a safe, stable, and affordable home. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Y'all, people are bringing it. So thank you so much to Ambassador Rice for your inspiring comments and remarks. It's the perfect send-off for all of our conference attendees. And we at the Alliance just want you to know that we have so much gratitude for all the speakers, both folks who are up here on the plenary stage and folks who are in sessions. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This morning, every morning during the conference, there's a 7:30 a.m., 7:30 a.m., doesn't matter what you did the night before, 7:30 a.m. in Calorama, we have the morning huddle. And I asked the Alliance team to share some of the themes that they saw emerge from the sessions and discussions this week. So we will, of course, do a longer debrief next week when everybody gets a little rest, and we'll use that information to inform our ongoing work and the next conference that we do, which I'll talk about in just a minute. but I thought I would take a moment to tell you some of what the team shared with me this morning. Lots of folks are talking about practical and operational solutions, one of the most prominent being shared housing. A bunch of you, I saw you in the shared housing session. That was one of the sessions I got to go to. We heard a lot of discussion about how solutions to homelessness aren't real solutions if they don't involve people with lived expertise in their design and implementation. We heard talk about partnerships and collaboration, especially with affordable housing and public health folks, and talk about how to connect with those partners, from folks who are doing it well to folks who are struggling with those kinds of, creating those kinds of partnerships. We heard some momentum around making sure people vote in the upcoming midterms because we know how important that election will be to our work. And this was brought into clearer focus by a speech that former President Trump gave yesterday, where he talked about homelessness. I know a lot of you, there's been a lot of chatter about some of the things he said. If you haven't read about it, please do. I'm not going to necessarily recommend that you listen to it. Sorry. And I certainly am not going to repeat any of what was said about people experiencing homelessness and the so-called solutions that they're recommended. But what I will say is that their messaging is coming from the top. And we, as a field, have to be vigilant about getting our good work out there just as loudly. We also heard a lot about unity, from Ambassador Rice to Sessions to just hanging out in the bar. It was a big theme across all of those spaces, and we heard that people can really feel like they're alone in this work because other systems aren't pulling their weight. But we also heard a hunger to be in community together, so we're supporting one another. And we heard a lot of people just being grateful for their time together this week. I know us at the team at the Alliance, Shalom and I were just talking this morning about how grateful we are to just be in this space with everybody. There's a ton more that I could talk about in this closing, but you'll hear follow-up from us soon. And I want to get everybody moved on to lunch. But before we do that, I want to do some thank yous. First, I want to thank all of you who are traveling to be here during what we all know is an uncertain time, and for sharing your work with each other and with the Alliance. And most of all, I want to thank you for all that you do every single day. I know that this is a space where we all get to collaborate and folks have to go back to their day jobs. And we just want you to know how thankful we are, because we know that every single day you are in pursuit of our shared mission of ending homelessness. And at the Alliance, we are grateful for your partnership. I want to thank all of you for respecting the masking and vaccination guidelines. You know, we were nervous, to be completely honest. I woke up at like 2 o'clock in the morning one night. I was like, oh gosh, we're gonna have so many people here. And taking the level of care that you all took. We know that some of you are coming from areas where their mask mandates have been lifted. Just the kind of care that you took for each other and for the hotel staff and for all of us is really a reflection about what a considerate, respectful, and selfless field we work in. So thank you all for that. I would be remiss if I didn't remind you to please take our surveys for each session that you attended. They can be found in the app. We actually do listen to all of the feedback, and we use it to help us plan better conferences. As you all heard from Steve this morning, Virtual Capitol Hill Day is Wednesday, September 14th. Please sign up. We're looking for 1,000 people, and we are very excited to be working with you all on that. And our West Coast Conference will be March 1st through the 3rd, 2023 in Oakland, California. So we hope to see you there. That created more buzz than I thought. Okay, all right. So I couldn't end this conference without thanking the incredible team at the Alliance who made this all happen. I came in on the tail end of this. You know, this team was just amazing putting this together. They all worked their hearts out this week, and I know that I am grateful, and so are all of you. Can I have the Alliance team please stand to be recognized? Nan Roman, you gotta stand. Okay, here we go. Shalom, Steve, Chandra, Gina, Teresa, Josh, Lindsay, Helen, Jerry, Sharon, Kevin, Joy, Kay, Tom, Christy, Andrew, John, Caitlin, Julie, Rachel, Alex, Samantha, and Nan Roman. And I'm getting to the end, folks, I promise. I want to thank all of the volunteers. We always have fantastic volunteers for their work staffing registration and breakout sessions. Thank you so much to our volunteers. We had a team from Friendship Place here helping us staff. Thank you. They are an outstanding provider here in DC. Thank you. And then I want everybody to stand to thank the hotel and banquet staff. This was one of their first big conferences since the beginning of the pandemic. Thank you. And thank you for welcoming me. I'm just so touched, so thank you to everybody. Enjoy your lunch, safe travels home. Take care, everybody.